If you decide to read or watch To Your Eternity, you may want to get emotionally prepared for a serious roller coaster ride. It'll make you smile, it'll make you cry, and it's honestly one of the best fantasy series we've ever seen. But what makes To Your Eternity great? And for those unfamiliar, what exactly is it about? Well, we'll tell you all about it. Special shout out to one of our commenters who suggested that we cover this series. We always appreciate hearing from our viewers. There will be some spoilers for the beginning of To Your Eternity, and we'll be explicitly spoiling the events of episode 1. But other than that, we'll do our best to keep this review spoiler-free for anyone who hasn't seen it if you want to check this one out on your own. But let's begin with the author behind To Your Eternity. The woman behind To Your Eternity is Yoshitoki Oima, who is probably most famous for writing a manga you may have already heard of. It's a drama called A Silent Voice. The film adaptation of A Silent Voice is often considered one of the greatest anime films of all time. And if you've read or watched A Silent Voice, then you can see why we called this an emotional roller coaster at the start. Of course, while A Silent Voice has a grounded story set in modern Japan, To Your Eternity is a much more fantastical series. It is the story of a shape-shifting immortal being named Fushi and their journey across the world. Most of the time, Fushi takes the form of a young white-haired boy who is the first human who Fushi ever met. Throughout the story, Fushi is able to gain more and more shape-shifting forms, copying the various people and animals he meets. The plot follows Fushi as he journeys across this strange new world, and he learns what it means to be human. And slowly, we begin to learn about what exactly Fushi is and where he came from. It's a slow, contemplative story, and we, the audience, learn more about this world Fushi is in at the same pace he does. At the very start of the story, the world around Fushi appears to be nothing but an endless sea of snow around him. This is what both we, Fushi, and the white-haired boy Fushi meets are led to believe. But later, we come to learn that there's a whole world outside of the ice and snow. The world of To Your Eternity is incredibly unique and has its own take on the fantasy genre. In a way, it's a lot more grounded than your average fantasy story. There aren't any wacky fantasy races like goblins or trolls. Instead, it's only humans and real-world animals. Anything magical is seen as unusual and foreign to the humans of the world. In some way, it's similar to Berserk's Golden Age arc in terms of its setting and world building, meaning that it just appears to be a realistic medieval with fantasy elements just beneath the surface. The most heavily supernatural elements of the story are all connected to Fushi. Aside from Fushi and his immortality, there's also a mysterious figure only known as the Beholder. He's a man that only Fushi can see that wears a cloak and acts as a sort of parental figure to Fushi in his times of need. The other main supernatural aspect is a group of creatures known as the Knockers. We don't know much about them at first, other than that they're aggressive creatures that stalk Fushi and seem to be able to replicate his transformations. Nobody, not even Fushi, really knows the true nature of the Knockers at first. It's one of the central mysteries of the anime. Of course, Fushi is more focused on survival than solving it at first. Throughout his journey, Fushi meets many different kinds of people. After he leaves the snow, Fushi is basically just a mindless husk, wandering around the wilderness and behaving like an animal. In fact, at first, he doesn't really have a name until a young girl named March chooses Fushi for him. March is the first human that Fushi meets after the white-haired boy, but far from the last. To Your Eternity has a large supporting cast of memorable characters that Fushi meets along the way. One of our personal favorites is Gugu, a sensitive young boy with serious facial injuries who ends up as a brother figure to Fushi. Gugu's story is a tragic one. He just wanted a normal life, but an unfortunate accident made him a social outcast. But he still does his best to try and achieve his dreams. Plus, his crush on the local noblewoman's daughter, Rin, is super cute. All of Yoshitoki Oima's writing is equal parts beautiful, heartwarming, and tragic. We're doing our best to avoid spoilers here, but we will warn you that a lot of the people you meet in this anime are probably going to die. And it's gonna be a real gut punch too, whenever it happens. Every character Fushi befriends is fully realized and fleshed out, and you really just want the best for them. But that just puts you on edge about who's going to die next, because ideally, you want them all to get out of this okay. And without getting into specifics, let's just say things don't always turn out okay. The perfect example of the beautiful tragedy that To Your Eternity is all about is in the very first episode. It's seen in the story of Fushi and the white-haired boy. If you haven't seen the anime, you may be wondering why we've just been calling this character the white-haired boy. Well, it's because we never really learn his name. The first form Fushi ever takes is that of the boy's pet wolf, and they spend a lot of time together. The white-haired boy is the last member of his tribe of people living in the snowy wasteland. Most of them left a long time ago, while he stayed behind just to take care of the elderly. But after they all died, it's just him and his pet wolf left. He has no idea where the rest of his tribe is now, but he still remains optimistic and wants to see them again. However, the boy attempts to follow his tribe's trail only lead in disaster when he injures his leg and is forced to return home. In the end, the white-haired boy dies, but not before telling his wolf to always remember him. Fushi now transforms into the white-haired boy and sets off to complete the boy's quest, trying to find a world outside of the snow. In just one episode, you really get invested in the boy's journey, only for it to end in tragedy. It sets a lot of expectations for the rest of the series, where it feels like almost any new character we meet is at risk of meeting a tragic fate. The only character who you can be sure won't die is Fushi. After all, he is immortal. Well, almost. The only thing that seems to be a genuine threat to Fushi's life is the knockers. Whenever they show up, you know things are about to get serious. We simply cannot stress enough how terrifying the knockers are. Villains that are an unstoppable, inhuman force are some of the scariest. Other classic examples of this sort of villain include Anton Chigurh and the T-1000. But the knockers are even more mysterious and inhuman than those two. They are almost Lovecraftian in a way. They are a force from the outside, the rest of this seemingly normal world that nobody understands, and they will not rest until Fushi is dead. No matter how safe he thinks he is, the knockers will always come back. Now, there's more to the knockers than what it initially seems. They have actual motivations for why they're hunting Fushi, but we don't want to give too much away in this video. To Your Eternity is great about gradually revealing information. There are no real huge expositional info dumps about how the world and the supernatural work. Things are slowly revealed to both the audience and Fushi. Stuff about the beholder, the knockers, and Fushi's true nature are all kept in the dark at first. If you want to find out the truth, then we recommend watching or reading To Your Eternity for yourself. It really is a beautiful and captivating story, and we can't do it justice in just one video. With its second season out, we definitely recommend checking it out if you haven't already. With intriguing world building, many lovable characters, and a tragic but still engaging story, there's a lot to love about To Your Eternity. So if you're not already a fan, we recommend checking it out. It's already received 2 seasons, and we think it definitely deserves a third one. And if you've already watched To Your Eternity, what are your thoughts on it?